Hey, what's up guys? Today we're taking another look at my Specna Arms SO2 core sniper. And the reason why is because it keeps jamming. And it has been doing this ever since I got it. But it wasn't that much of a problem because it happened every 50 to 40-ish shots or so. But now it literally happens every shot. So the way it jams, I'm going to disassemble the trigger by the way, to show you entirely how this works. But first, in quick review, the way it works, it has a safety feature, aside from the normal safety to put the gun on safe. It has a safety feature built in that when the bolt is in the upwards position, so not fully down, that it can't fire. So I've already loaded this thing. So it should be fully loaded. And as you can see, wait, let me zoom you in a little bit. This is that safety pin. So when the bolt is in the upwards position, this thing is not fully in there. So this little metal can go all the way up against that even smaller bar on top. And you can see the spring is still compressed. So when I push it down, let me see if it does. Yeah. Now this should come up, but it doesn't because it's jammed again. And when the problem with that is when it's inside the gun, you can't do anything about it. You really have to take it apart to do anything about it, because I can pull the trigger, nothing happens because this thing is blocking the trigger. And as long as the trigger is being blocked, the plate that's in here can't go down and fire the gun, obviously. Now there's no BB in here, so there's nothing chambered. It's fully empty. But yeah, it's loaded in the sense that I've cocked it back and pushed it back forward, and it's now put down. So it is, in fact, loaded in that sense. Now, you'll notice when I take this screw out, that after a while this thing will fire. You will hear that. Obviously you don't want to do this when there's a BB in there. If this happens to you and there is a BB stuck in there, make sure to point it at something like, I don't know, a cardboard box or something that's full of other cardboard. Stuff like that to ensure you don't accidentally shoot something that you don't want to shoot. And this is obviously an airsoft gun, for those that haven't seen the previous video. So this is not an actual gun that shoots proper round. So I won't be destroying anything if I accidentally shoot into a box. Now on the end of it, there is a box for me. You can't see that, but yeah, not important. I'm going to take this screw out, and as I do, when I loosen this up, this plate will get off and off, gain enough distance that that it doesn't hold the spring back anymore, like the plunger back. So that will shoot forward, create the pressure, and shoot the gun. There you go. Now, let me take this entire trigger assembly off, because with that off, it's a lot easier to actually show you what happens in this safety of this trigger thing, of the trigger. Now, mine's pretty hard to get off because I've got a pretty strong spring in here. But basically, let me take the bolt out, because this can fully come out now. Let me zoom you out. Let's put this away. Alright. So we have our bolt. In here sits the plunger up front, the spring, and something that holds the spring back to make sure it's and that is pushed against this. So when you pull this bolt out of the other part and you pull it backwards, so you lift it up and backwards, what happens is your trigger stays in the same place, this entire thing goes back, and you're compressing this back plate and therefore also putting tension on the spring. And then when you push it forward, this part of the plunger, this back part, will have actually hooked underneath this, or behind this, I should say, and it will be locked in position. So when you push it forward, it's locked in position until you pull the trigger. then this part lets go, and this thing can go forward and push the air out and push your BB out of the barrel. That's how this gun works. But how the trigger works, like the trigger safety that I mentioned, that is this pin. As you can see, it is, let me zoom you in a little bit. This is the fully opens position. When it jams, it stays into this position, and that's the problematic. So, in order to make it work for the bolt, there is a little indent here, as you can see, hopefully. So when the bolt is upwards, this part can't come up because this ring is solid. So this thing is compressed. Then we get to that indent, and then it should shoot up all the way, and then we can push the trigger all the way. That's how it works. So let's take the trigger apart, and then you can see it in action in here. So let's put the bolt to the side. To open up the trigger, this will void your warranty, by the way. We've got 4 screws that are very obvious on the side. Doesn't matter which one is for which hole, because the threading of each hole goes further than it needs to, and none of them have the full length to go through. Don't lose the screws, obviously. Now the last screw is the 5th one, that's this one for the safety. When the safety is pulled, the trigger can't be pulled anyway, because this little part on the bottom is blocking it. And that's held in there by a screw and a spring. So there's a spring in between there. Like that. Take this off. There we go. Let me zoom you in to show you what happens. So, as I said, the bolt is cocked, the spring is compressed, and the piston is loaded behind this thing, so it's trapped behind this thing. And when it's pressed, it's over here and trapped, and it can't go down. This little plate in here on top can't go down unless the trigger is pulled. As we can see here, it's held in place by the trigger, this part here. So when the trigger is forward, all the way, notice that this entire plate can come down enough, and then the piston can go forward because it's free, it's liberated. That's how this works. Now, as I showed you on the outside, the first safety blocks this part. And this is the part that was jamming, that was what I was talking about, that wasn't working. If this doesn't fully come up, the trigger can't be pulled all the way. Let me show you, let me push this down. As you can see, oh shoot, that is one of the problems. Everything in here is spring loaded, of course. And with the side off, it's really easy for things to get out of place. So when this pin is downward, as you can see, the spring can't come forward enough for this bar that I'm pushing down on to come down, because this part, this little piece here, is still being blocked. It can't come down enough. So that's the problem. The bolt needs to be in the downward position. So this is fully up and out of the way, and then we can fire. So now that it's back together, I hope you understand how this jam occurs a little bit better, because this thing doesn't come up all the way. And one of the reasons I think that this is happening is because there's a lot of play in this thing. So let me show you the sideways wobble of this part and the forward wobble. So I think this sideways wobble and the forward wobble are responsible for the jamming with this part, and it not properly getting back in position in here in this slot. So the way I'm thinking of fixing this is by rounding it a little bit more on this side, so on and on the front side, and that way making it a little bit more easier to glide into the here, because when it's actually in the entire bolt is assembled, you will see that it actually scratches on. Well, you can actually see it on the bolt because I've got some damage there. Let me see if I can bring you closer. As you can see there, I've got some scratches, and that's because this little pin gets stuck on there and doesn't come loose. So I think that's how the jam's occurring, that this, in terms of the wobble, ends up getting stuck on this ring, because there's a little indent past this ring in which it can easily catch, and it's hard to get out. And then it can't go sideways either, because if it goes sideways it will simply still slide in that ring instead of getting back on this ring where it actually should be. So what I've done is I've ordered another trigger box from a different manufacturer. This one is from Well, which also makes snipers like this one, because I couldn't buy a trigger box like this and not like a new one, a brand new one. But their trigger box is very, very similar. I've got one right here, as you can see. Now there's a little difference between the two. Let me bring you in a little closer. So the main difference between these two triggers is the shape of this safety part. So as you can see here, it's rammed forward and then flat on top, but basically it is only shaped curved like this. So the highest point is on the most left side, which is where it's getting stuck in the wrong lane, and which is why it jams. This one, if you look a little closer, you can see that it's also rammed on this part. So I was thinking, like, first I'm gonna try placing this trigger box in there and see if it works, and if that solves the problem already. But then, even if that works, I also want to grind off a little piece here, because some of you might not be able to get your hands on like a trigger box like this. So if you grind that piece off, if that worked, if that would have solved the problem, and if it does, then that will be an option for you if you can't even get your hands on another trigger box like I did. So yeah, let's try putting this one on first. Okay, let me see. Oh shit, that is a slight problem. Okay, let me zoom you in and hopefully you can see that. As you can see, it does not fully align if I screw it in. So it's not going to be as easy as just putting that one on there, sadly. Okay, that means I'm going to have to take this pin out of the Well trigger box and put it inside my Specna Arms trigger box. What I was trying to say, make sure that it is the little lip is under this part here. So like that under it, this sticking out part here, nicely under it. Then it sits good. And then push in the spring. Put that one in there. This little pin in here. Lift this into the trigger. Put that hole in it. And slide it down on the rod. Yeah, that feels nice. That trigger is there. Let me see. It definitely does fully work if it is fully up. As you can see, this can come down nicely. So we should be good. Let's put everything back together. Don't forget this part. Okay, I'm gonna keep this one apart in case I need to change some more things. We got the two mounting screws. Oh, I noticed the cable, sorry. That's my camera cable, by the way. Reviews. Let's release my boy and see what goes. Like that. All right. No magazine. Let's go. No, still does that jam. Big failure, it did work. No magazine, as you can see. What I forgot is I forgot to take out the safety in all my haste and enthusiasm. So it did work. Safety off, let's forward. There it is. Fixed. Yeah, so let's grind this off a little bit so it becomes a little bit more easier to push down on and it doesn't get stuck in the wrong track. So let's get you in there. As you can see, it's grinded off a little bit. It's nice and smooth, nice and round. I'm gonna hand file it a little bit more to make it a little smoother. But this I think should do the trick already. To have a nice rounded top instead of a only pointy one that gets stuck.